Hello and welcome to the Internet Skeptic's Guide to Ethanol. This presentation we're going to take a look at the science behind ethanol. We want to inform the public, give them the information that they need to know so that they can make rational and informed decisions when they go to the voting booth. Also, we have another video out there that I encourage you to watch. It is titled Global Warming, Myth or Reality, A Skeptic's View. It is a very thorough review of the science supporting the theory of global warming. All right, how we're going to address this issue is we're going to take a look at the production process of ethanol. You're going to see this slide multiple times, and I'm going to go through each step and review it so that you understand what is involved in the production of this so-called environmentally friendly alternative energy source. First of all, this process reviews the production using 1 bushel of corn. They refer to it as 47.6 dry pounds of corn. Now remember, in order to get that corn just doesn't fall out of the sky. You need to grow it, you need to plant it, you need to plow it, you need to harvest it, you need to spray pesticides, herbicides, and fertilize it. And the average yield of corn is 142.2 bushels per acre. So using this process, you can create 370 gallons per acre. Okay, and to me that doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot. To do all that damage to the environment for a full acre, and you're only going to get 370 gallons out. Okay. Now on this side, unfortunately, it's a little small to read. You can download this presentation at www.theinternetskeptic.com and take a better look at this graphic. It's much easier to read that way. I'm going to read to you what it says. It says that basically it requires more than 1,000 gallons of water is required to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. And I want to repeat that. This is supposedly an environmentally friendly energy source. It requires 1,000 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. And remember, supposedly many of our cities are undergoing a water shortage, especially out west. So we're going to drain our rivers and streams to produce ethanol. The next step of this process is you have to take that tremendous amount of water and heat it to extremely high temperatures. As you can see, it has to get increased to 190 degrees, then 230 degrees, then 140 degrees, and then down to 93 degrees for 2 full days. So as you can see, there's a tremendous energy input that goes into the production of this so-called alternative energy. This is the most ironic step of the process. Remember, this is supposedly an environmentally friendly alternative energy source. Well, the real doozy here is that 6.1 pounds of global warming atmospheric CO2 is produced for every gallon of ethanol. I want to repeat that once again. 6.1 pounds of atmospheric CO2 for every gallon of ethanol produced. Okay, well, let's put this entire process together. What you start with is 47.6 pounds of corn. It takes thousands of gallons of water. It produces 15.8 pounds of atmospheric CO2. And what do you get? You get a lousy 2.6 gallons of ethanol. Okay, what that nets down to being is 18.3 pounds of corn produces 6.1 pounds of CO2, and you get 1 gallon of ethanol. Okay, what are we talking about when we talk about ethanol and octane? And remember, the amount of energy you get out of these molecules is through the number of bonds that you're breaking. As you can see with ethanol, which is the top molecule there, you have very few bonds to break. You essentially have an alcohol group, 2 carbons, and 5 hydrogens. And not a lot of energy there. Now look at the chart, the molecule below there. That's the octane molecule. Tremendous amount of energy packed into that thing. You've got 8 carbons, 8 and 18 hydrogens. So you can see when you burn octane, you get a lot of bang for your buck. When you burn ethanol, it's a very low energy molecule. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that when you burn a gallon of gasoline, you get 125,000 BTUs. When you burn a gallon of ethanol, you only get 84,400. What that means essentially is that you need to burn 1.5 gallons of ethanol for the energy output of burning 1 gallon of gasoline. So what you end up doing is you actually end up burning more ethanol than you would be burning of gasoline. And remember that when we were talking about earlier with the CO2 release from the fermentation process, that doesn't include the CO2 that you're going to get from burning this 1.5 gallons of gasoline. Okay, this is a
study that was done at an Ivy League university. Once again, you can download this presentation at www.theinternetskeptic.com. Click on it and it'll take you right to the research. But what it shows is that if you produce ethanol out of corn, it takes 29% more energy to produce than you get back. If you use wood biomass, it's 57% more energy goes into it than you get back. All right, so as you can see, this is essentially a net energy loser. It is unsustainable simply for the reason that you end up putting in more energy than you ever get back out. Now, I have seen some recent studies that are showing that they're becoming more efficient with the process, but still they're hoping to get almost to a break even where you put $1 in, you put $1 back. This report, as it shows there, as far as corn goes, is essentially saying that it's like paying $1.29 to get $1 back. So ethanol, the way to best describe it is it's like a Las Vegas slot machine. You know, you just keep putting more money in, but you keep getting less back.
Did that not...
All right, this slide reviews the environmental damage that what America would undergo in order to produce this ethanol. Remember, 1 acre of land can generate about 362 gallons of ethanol per year. Currently, people use approximately 174 million gallons of gasoline per day. That would require, because remember ethanol is a lower energy content, that would require 261 million gallons per day. That's an M, millions with an M. In order to produce that, we would need to basically clear, burn, drain wetlands, cut down forests in order to ramp up production to 260 million acres of corn. Right now we're currently growing about 73 million acres of corn. That means we would more than need to triple the amount of land being used to produce corn in this country. Now remember, you don't just go out there and plant corn. You have to, once again, drain the wetlands, you have to cut down the forest, you have to tear up the land. More importantly, you need to fertilize it. It takes 137 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer per acre. All right, so you're going to be increasing nitrogen into the atmosphere and the environment by a huge amount. Also, you need to use atrazine, all right, because you need to control for weeds. You use 1 pound of atrazine per acre. So as you can see, the environmental damage that would occur in order to produce this amount of ethanol is just tremendous.
Here's another example of just how destructive ethanol really is. Now remember, we've already reviewed the environmental disaster that it is, but to think that we're actually paying farmers to commit this environmental disaster is outrageous. We're paying in subsidies 51 cents per gallon. So we're paying farmers 51 cents a gallon to go out there and drain our rivers and streams, drain our swamplands, drain our wetlands, and destroy our forests and agricultural land. Worse then is we impose a tariff on sugar-based ethanol so that we can't import the cheaper stuff. So and that costs the American consumer 54 cents. So by having to pay more and save less, the net cost to the American consumer is $1.05 per gallon of ethanol. So we, as consumers, as taxpayers, are paying $1.05 so that our farmers can go out there and destroy our environment. Just like the banning of DDT, the final cost of ethanol will literally be measured in human lives. And what we have here is the price of a corn future. At the end of 2005, it was trading below 200. Now it is up over 375. So within a single year, the price of corn has gone up nearly 50%. What does that mean? That means our poor people will have more expensive food to buy. They'll be able to afford less food. But most importantly, people in the third world who rely upon inexpensive food will see their corn misdirected from feeding them to fueling U.S.-made automobiles. This is not only an environmental disaster, it is a humanitarian disaster. And whether the consequences are intended or not, the result of these environmental policies, just like the banning of DDT and just like the costs that they will impose to prevent global warming, can be measured in human lives.
This is the most disturbing thing about ethanol production. Brazil happens to be the world's largest producer of ethanol. Well, guess what? The rainforest happens to be in Brazil. So how are they producing ethanol in Brazil? They're cutting down rainforest and planting sugarcane in order to get this quote-unquote environmentally friendly energy source. More importantly, as the U.S. demand for ethanol increases, more than likely they're going to start importing ethanol. My bet is it's probably going to come from Brazil, because they already have the infrastructure built. And if that is the case, that we will be cutting down even more of the rainforest in order to produce this quote-unquote environmentally friendly energy source.